because there are a lot of founders and co-founders developing in India as well. The ecosystem is brewing. So I just want to know, like, there will be a lot of challenges which you face as a co-founder or founder. So how did you tackle those? And what would be your advice for the founders and co-founders that are, getting on the track and starting up? So can you share something about?
Sure. Anirudh, the thing is, by hobby, I'm a biker, right?
Great.
I love riding my motorcycle. I have ridden across almost every state in India. Uh, Even when I was living in Africa, I did a few long rides here and there. Now, in my travels across India, what becomes very apparent to you if you are somebody who's observing people around you
Yeah.
is that there's a massive education gap that we live in with this country.
Yes.
Because on one hand, you have a trajectory where you go to an elite school, you come into a good college, you go to do your MBA at Symbiosis. Maybe perhaps you will end up with a degree abroad as you go on in your career, right? That's the urban India, that's the elite, affluent India. There is another track where there are schools where there are just two rooms. One room is housing classes 1 to 5, this other room is housing classes 6 to 10. There is one teacher who's mostly absent. Part of that room is also being used to store building materials and cement and bricks. And
Yeah.
for us to kind of wrap our heads around that being a school is almost difficult. We all make fun of stories where our fathers and grandfathers have told us that we used to walk so many miles to go to school.
Yes.
That's still reality for a lot of Indians, if at all they're going to school. Because at a certain age, let's say if you're 12 to 14, and the family can legitimately say that, listen, you are going to school is not going to change anything. Your school is hardly teaching you anything, right?
Yeah.
For that one midday meal, there is no point in sending you to school. Go to the field and start working, right?
Correct.
Or if the parents are in construction labor, the child would, by the age of 16, ensure that he fudges his age, presents himself as an 18-year-old and goes into the construction labor line. Which is a shocking thing because we as a country, we boast of a demographic dividend, right? The largest youth workforce that we have in this country. But what work are we enabling that youth for? Is it physical labor, right? Is our contribution to the Qatar World Cup going to be as construction labor, right? And this used to trouble me, right? If you every ride that I do on the highway, you meet people at a dhaba, you talk to people, you talk to truck drivers, and when you say आपके बच्चे हैं क्या कर रहे हैं, कौन से स्कूल में पढ़ रहे हैं, सर वो पढ़ाई वढ़ाई नहीं करते, वो ऐसे ही घर पे है, कुछ देर बाद काम पे लग जाएंगे, right? That's the typical thing that you get. On the same time, you are seeing massive ads of these huge edtech companies. You hear about billions of dollars being plugged into them, huge valuations. And to my mind, I could not balance these two images out.
Yeah.
So there was clearly a gap. Like if I look at the pyramid of population in India, we are dealing with the top of the pyramid, doing a lot of things for them. They are spoiled for choice, right? Today, if let's say somebody has a child who's in class 6 or 7 and just puts it out on social media, I'm looking for an edtech product for my child, they would get more than 40 calls in the next 24 hours. That's the reality that we live in. And then there's a huge chunk of population, a massive set of young people who don't have access to any education. So by the time it was 2018, and I was working with Perform Group, which is a UK-based organization. So I was heading up their South Asia business. And we used to run brands like Opta and Gold.com. And it was very exciting working in sports, doing what I love, talking to brands, talking to federations, talking to broadcasters. But at the same time, there's this growing dissatisfaction within me that there is this gap and people are not doing enough for it. By the time I had learned enough about content production, I had been around broadcasters long enough to know how a green screen works, how a shoot can be done at a very, very low cost, how you can produce content at scale without incurring massive amounts of cost. Around the same time, the person that I co-founded Notebook with, my cousin Achin, he was a director at Deloitte. He had just become father to twins. And as a new father, he was also being concerned about how education in India works. So we being part of the same family, we got in touch on and off. We started speaking about this. So by the middle of 2018, there was this clear understanding that we both wanted to do something in the education space, something to do with content, something to do in breaking that English barrier to vernacular students. And therefore, Notebook was born.
Okay.
The problem is in media, you hear about those 10 founders who have made it big. You hear about their valuations, you hear about their funding. You do not hear about the 10,000 other founders who did not make it big. So the kind of troubles that we were getting into was new to us. And being an entrepreneur, you kind of go in with the understanding that, okay, it'll be hard work. It'll be a lot of sleepless nights. It'll be difficult to put together funds, difficult getting a team together. But the scale at which these problems will come, the velocity at which they'll hit you, is something that you cannot anticipate. And if people are listening to this who have entrepreneurial plans with themselves, here is something that they could take away. If you have a revenue estimation for yourself in, let's say, 3 years' time, divide it by 4 to make it realistic. If you have an estimation of the cost and troubles that you will have in 3 years' time, multiply it by 4 and it will be realistic. Right? So that's how the economics of it works.